About your question about the microphone, if you click on the power on button, then you will see uh,
Yeah, there's 4 buttons in the front.
this one over here, and you will see the yes. Just
Good morning.
Good
Here's a
morning.
ticket. Good luck.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
It was really good.
What are some other good local restaurants?
Where have you been?
Well, Calhoun's and where we went Wednesday night. I don't know if it's been to Tupelo.
Tupelo Honey's good. It's a chain, but it's good. Really anywhere on the square is good. Amelia, the Italian place, if you like sushi, Nama. Old City, there's Cafe. It's kind of fancy, but it's Greek food's really good. Gosh, you really can't go wrong downtown. Calhoun's is like, everybody loves Calhoun's, but to me, it's just like a little dry, not that exciting. But yeah, you can't really go wrong anywhere. All right, I think we're gonna get started. All right, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you this morning. I'm super excited to be here and sharing this session with Ann Roberts. I'm going to talk about the psychology behind root cause analysis interviewing, and Ann's going to teach us how to manage stress. And boy, could we all use that, right? So I'm super excited about that session too. She'll introduce herself when she does her session. I'm Barb Carr. Many of you know me. I've worked at Taproot since 2006. And prior to that, I worked in legal investigation. So that's a whole different animal because I worked at private law firms where you represent a client, somebody wins and somebody loses, but nothing ever really gets fixed. So by the end of the week, we would have new clients in to work with and never fix any of these problems. So it's just been a real honor and privilege to represent Taproot and teach Taproot. I love what I do. So today I want to talk to you about the psychology behind root cause analysis interviewing. So how many of you do investigative interviews? Raise your hand if you do investigative interviews. So before we get started, I'm interested in hearing what are some problems that you have with your investigative interviews. And we can flex and pivot and make sure that we get those covered in this session. What kind of problems are you having in your investigative interviews, in your interviewing process? What would you like to do better? What do you think?
I'll start off.
Sure.
One of the things that we always deal with is defensiveness from the interviewee.
Okay.
Being closed off, I guess, probably.
Yep. Hear that a lot. What else? What other problems are you having? What would you like to do better? Or here, or how would you like to change your interview process? Did you have something? Okay, you're thinking, okay. What's the information? Are you getting the amount of information that you want to get? Quality and quantity of your information? How's that working out? Do you feel like you're getting the information you need? Let's wake up, everybody. Linda. People protecting their peers, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, to your question,
Yes.
get information, it's not always accurate. Because of what they're seems like they're wanting to protect peers, even though there's no reason to do that.
Right. You're interviewing someone and they're giving you some information and you already have the big picture and you're looking at maybe your snapshot and thinking, this is really not adding up. You know, you're getting information. So we hear that a lot too. Anything else? Anything else that you can think of? Well, I want to start out today by talking about the Taproot 12-step interview process. And if you're all Taproot trained, then you probably are somewhat familiar with this process. But the purpose of this talk today is to show you the psychology behind it. Because sometimes you think 12 steps in an interview process, that's a lot. Why do we have to do all these steps? But there really is a method to it. And there really is a reason why we have broken the interview process down into 12 steps. So I'm going to give you an overview of the 12-step process, and then we will deep dive the psychology behind it. So the very first step in the Taproot 12-step process, of course, is scheduling the interviews. So the Taproot 12-step process has a very strong cognitive component in it. And you would do a cognitive interview for a witness to an incident, okay? Because a cognitive interview is a way to get more quantity and quality of information from a witness's memory. So you wouldn't do a cognitive interview to somebody who didn't see it because, of course, that information is not stored in their memory. So the very first thing we want to do is get our interviews scheduled when an incident happens. Now, tell me about what your process is like. I'm always very curious about the people in my classes because it just makes me better at instructing and helps me to add to my courses. How do you handle that? When you have an incident occur at your facility, at what point do you do interviews? Do you hand out witness statements? How do you handle that?
I hand out get them to write it out,
Mhm.
and then I schedule them as soon as I can. And then have some information to start with,
Mhm.
and then I'm able to kind of focus my questions on already having a little bit of knowledge.
Okay, so when you ask them to write it out, do you have a specific form or you're just like, just write out?
Just write it out.
Okay, and that's awesome. So we know science tells us that memory, the most attrition to someone's memory, they lose most of their memory within the first 2 hours after they see something. Now, it's really hard to get around to all those, when an incident occurs, to get around to all those witnesses within 2 hours. And then after that, attrition to memory, if it was committed to long-term memory, is much slower. But we want to capture what they know as well as we can. So getting those witness statements out or asking them to write out, what they witness is a very good practice. But we would never recommend just taking that statement and using that as an interview. That's just kind of that's a piece of information for the snap chart. And it's often one of the first pieces of information that you get for the snap chart is the witness statement. We call them the initial observation form. And the reason we call it an initial observation form is if you hand someone a document that has a witness statement on the top of it, that's kind of intimidating for someone. Then it seems like a legal, kind of a back in my law firm days type of thing. But initial observation is just softer. It's just like, okay, what did you observe that day? And our initial observation form, we don't have a bunch of questions on there. We just want them to tell us everything they remember about the incident. So very good practice. First thing we do in step 1 of the 12-step process is get those interviews scheduled. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Event analysis, because it's, yeah, the words matter. Words matter. So changing that terminology can help in an investigation. Second step of the process is interview preparation. So here's the stage of the process that everybody asks me, okay, so interview preparation, help me write some questions. How am I going to write some questions? And it is important to have, think about some questions, think about this incident and the information that you already have on your snap chart. You can use your root cause tree. The 15 questions on the front of the root cause tree are developed by human factors experts. And these are questions that you might not have thought of to ask. And how many of you in an investigation have done an interview and then had to bring that person back or call that person again because you forgot to ask them something? Isn't that a time waster? You can waste less time if you use your root cause tree, the front and the back, really, the basic cause categories. If you open your dictionary, it's full of questions, right? And if you get those questions from your witnesses when you're going through your root cause tree, doing your root cause analysis, you've got your evidence ready to answer yes or no. So it's very time saving to use the root cause tree as an evidence collection tool, specifically with respect to preparing your interview questions. But make sure when you are using your root cause tree to prepare for your interview, you're not doing the analysis. And we all do. We all have our assumptions like, oh, I know how this happened. I'm going to go through the root cause tree. When you're using the root cause tree for evidence collection, you are looking for the what. You're not looking for the why. And as you know, it takes about 70% of your investigation is spent building a snap chart. So, you put your time in up front, saves you a whole lot of time later, specifically when you get to identifying your causal factors and taking those through the root cause tree. It'll just save you a lot of time. So we're going to do an interview prep and we'll use our root cause tree to think of some questions, but these questions are going to be clarifying questions. We're not going to barrel into the interview and start firing questions at people. And that's what witnesses expect us to do when they're going to be interviewed. They're expecting that they're going to sit in a chair and you're going to have a list of questions to ask them, and they're going to answer them, and then they're going to leave. That's not what that's not how you should run your investigation. More about that in a moment. Step number 3, the interview introduction. This is so important. You don't have that much time to make a good impression. So you really need to take a few minutes to think about, before that witness comes into your office or that space where you're having the interview, is it clear? Is it organized? Are you ready? Have you had a really stressed out day? Because your body language is going to affect your witness, okay? So first of all, you have to be aware of your body language. Are your shoulders up around your ears? Drop them down away from your ears. Relax yourself a little bit, because part of having a successful interview is being able to facilitate and help your witness relax, okay? We want to help them relax and we want them to trust us. So putting a little effort into your interview will do that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. This is part of the psychology behind investigative interviewing. So step 4 of the Taproot 12-step interview process is explaining the interview methods. And this is as simple as saying, here's how we're going to conduct this interview. I'm going to have I have a notepad here, and I'm going to be taking some notes, because you know how intimidating it is when you're talking to someone and all of a sudden they grab their note paper and they start scribbling things down. It's like, what are they writing down about me, right? So you not only want to explain to them how you're going to be taking notes, whether that is with a pad of paper or putting it on your snap chart or typing it in. You not only want to tell them that you're taking notes, but be sure to tell them that when the interview concludes, they'll be able to review the notes with you, okay? So letting them review the notes with you does 2 things. One, it helps to bring those cortisol levels down. I said it's very important to make your witness feel very relaxed during the interview. And so now the witness knows, okay, if they get something wrong that I said, I will be able to correct that. But there's another reason too. It's for you too, because at the end of the interview, you have the opportunity to review those notes with them. First, get their corrections if you did get something wrong, but it will help you think of, buy you a little bit more time for that interview because you're reviewing those notes at the end and you might think of other things to ask them. So make sure that you explain how you will do that. We would never recommend a group interview of witnesses, like 5 witnesses in a room. Why would we not recommend that?
Not allow people to speak independently.
People won't speak independently is a reason. Can you think of any other reasons? Yes.
So if I have a different take or view than this gentleman here, I might not voice it, or I might be influenced by what.
Exactly. We influence each other in group situations like that. I would recommend a group interview if it was a group of experts. Say you are taking a look at a piece of equipment and you don't know anything about that equipment. So you're going to get 5 experts from your plant who work on that equipment to come in and start brainstorming. They're not eyewitnesses, they're experts. And so group interviews of experts are helpful sometimes because you can build on each other's knowledge. But definitely one interview, one witness at a time being interviewed. A one-to-one interview is good, but even better, but we don't always have this type of resources at our office, is a 2-to-1 interview where you have 2 interviewers and 1 witness if you have the resources to do that. And then you would tell the witness, hey, this is introduce the other interviewer and say, they're taking notes and I'm going to conduct the interview, because it's really hard to listen and take notes. Very hard to listen. And no matter what your best intentions are, as Kyle is nodding yes, because we just did this exercise in my interview class on Tuesday, you know, it's really hard to listen and take notes. So if you have the resources, that would be great. Emily, did you have a question?
I wanted to
Yeah.
just chime in about that Tuesday course. It was really eye-opening when we were doing this exercise. When we would like flip roles, I already knew some stuff that if we had a group interview, I would have not said it because that person not that I was blaming anybody, but I probably wouldn't have, if that was my supervisor in the room, I wouldn't have said that in front of that investigator.
Right. Yeah, good comment. Thank you. So we've got schedule interviews, interview prep, interview intro. One thing I neglected to mention on the interview intro, which is number 3, is right away after you do your introduction, you want to say, hey, thank you for coming. We called you here today because we want to find and fix a problem so they never happen again. Because a lot of times, of course, as you know, our witnesses are coming in, they're not sure if they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get somebody else in trouble, but just kind of setting that stage of, hey, we're working together. We don't want these incidents to happen again. So we do our interview intro. We're explaining the interview methods, telling them how we're going to take notes, telling them that we're going to review those at the end. And these 2 steps have a reason that I'm going to explain as we progress through this presentation, which is very different from this reason, which is break the ice. So building rapport is so important in an investigative interview. And that is one step that investigators forget to do a lot, or they're just busy and in a hurry, or they don't think it's important or value. And I get it because I'm not from Tennessee. I'm from Indiana. I'm from up north. And I used to work for a law firm, and we didn't build, it was frowned upon to spend too much time chatting, you know. And so I moved down here, and Southern culture is, if you don't build a little rapport, then you're suspect, you know, people are a little suspicious of you. So I had to really learn how to do small talk, which was not, you know, something that after living and working in the legal environment was not something that was natural to me, but I'm pretty good at it now, I think. So building rapport is really important because it makes people trust you. It's a way to build trust. And so we really want our witnesses to trust us during the investigative interviews. That's a very important thing. So breaking the ice is a way to build rapport. It's also there's another reason that we're breaking the ice too. So the very first thing that we would do maybe to break the ice and build rapport is we would ask them a question that's not related to the incident. So we're not going to have them come into the interview and right away, start pounding them questions. Now, if this is someone who was injured, obviously injured or something, it's just the sensitive thing to do and the empathetic thing to do and a rapport building thing to do to say, how are you doing? How are you doing? But other than that, we haven't even jumped into the interview questions yet. So we are going to ask them something not related to the incident, and we are going to ask an open-ended question. Because this step of the process, what we are doing is we are teaching the witness how this interview is going to go without telling them how it's going to go. Because people believe what we do more than what we say, right? So we are going to teach them by asking them an open-ended question, because we are going to get lots of information from our interview. So we're not going to ask closed-ended questions. We're going to ask open-ended. And one acronym that you can think about using, I like to use, is TED, T-E-D, and it stands for Tell, Explain, Describe. Tell, explain, describe. So start your questions with tell, explain, describe. My favorite one is tell. And you can practice this just within your interpersonal relationships. This is just a good communication skill, right? Tell me about your day today. Tell me about, but in an investigative interview, you could also say, describe to me this, or can you explain to me this? You want them to give you lots of information. So for example, in this step, I might say, hey, tell me about how you came to work at this company. I'm interested, I'm curious. Tell me about how you came to work at this company. And allow them to start telling you the story, allow them to talk. And so people will, for example, will say, hey, yeah, I started here 5 years ago. My uncle worked here and he said there was an opening. So I came down and applied. And then they'll stop talking. Well, a way to get them to start talking again is to repeat the last few words that they said back to you as a question. So for example, if the last sentence the person said to you was, I came down to the plant and applied. You could say, came down and applied, ? And then you just have a little bit of a pause. People will usually give you more information. And this is another thing that you can practice in your interpersonal communication skills. You'll get better at talking to your kids and your significant other and your family and your friends if you repeat back the last couple words with curiosity and genuine interest with a question mark. So practice that. Just try practicing it, not in an interview situation, but just in your interpersonal relations, and see how much more information you get. So we want to also remember that we want to allow pauses. Now, pauses in an interview are very uncomfortable if you're not used to it, or if you're in a conversation with someone and all of a sudden there's like a little pause and your mind immediately goes to, what do I say? How do I get the conversation going? It just seems a little bit awkward. But in an interview situation, it's really important, especially in the cognitive part that we're going to talk about in a minute, because people will stop talking for many reasons, okay? Some of those reasons are they're processing. They're processing and they're still thinking about what they're going to say. Another reason is they think they've given you enough information. They know more information, but they think they've given you enough. They're just going to see if you're going to press this thing or try to get any more information. So they might give it if you don't jump in. Other times it's because, they really don't have any information left. So you can use the echo probing technique. You can summarize, paraphrase back to them, just trying to buy that time to get more information. And this is in the rapport building stage. So when we're doing rapport building, I'm not talking about sitting around talking for a half hour or 45 minutes. I'm talking we're investing maybe 5 or 10 minutes up front in this interview, just using these tools to build the rapport. Because now we have taught our witness, when we start this interview, that we are going to expect them to tell us a story, because they haven't come in and we haven't started firing questions at them. We've already taught them by saying, hey, tell me about how you came to work here. or even saying something about yourself or the football game this weekend or something that's non-threatening, something that is positive, some little small talk that is positive. So we're going to move to the next step of the interview process. Whoops. The questioning part of this process are steps 6 and 7. Now, remember, I told you early on, when you're preparing for your interview, you can use your root cause tree to come up with questions to ask your witness. Those are clarifying questions. You do not ask those questions until step 7. In step 6, you don't ask a question at all. You're just saying you're wanting to get the story, and you've already put your witness in the principal role, okay? This is a big mistake that interviewers make. They come into the interview and they take the principal role. So then the witness just sits there and lets them do the interview. You want your witness to have the principal role. And you've already established that in the rapport building stage because you're giving them freedom to talk. You know, you're asking them open-ended questions and you're not rushing them and you're listening. You're taking a drink of water instead of coming up with your next question just to buy time and see if they'll give you more information. So you have already established that in building rapport. Now we're in the cognitive part. The very first thing you're going to say is some variation of this. You may write your own variation, but it's some variation of tell me from start to finish what you saw on the day of the incident. Tell me from start to finish what you saw the day of the incident. And encourage them that no detail is too small, because we as the investigation team, we have a bigger, broader picture because we've been working on our snap chart. We know a lot of things that happen that maybe they don't know about. So there might be little pieces of information that they think, I'm not going to bother this interviewer with this little information. It doesn't even really seem like it's relevant, so they don't tell us, but we have to give them permission to report the small details. Encourage them to take their time. Now, remember when I was talking about body language and how we can really affect our witnesses when they come in to talk to us with our body language? By the same token, our voice and the pace of our voice, and I really have to watch this because when I really get excited, I like to talk really, really fast. The pace of our voice will affect them too. So we want to kind of slow down our talking a little bit. Bring your voice, the octave, a little lower down. You know, sometimes we can sound really high and stressed out, you know, but we can put our octave down a little bit lower, and then we just seem more in control. It's more calming to the witness by thinking and remembering to do those things. So we're going to ask them, we're putting them in the principal role. Tell me from start to finish what you saw that day, which is the same thing you want them to write on your witness statement or your, you know, and you're building upon that. No detail is too small, and take your time. And then you do the same thing. You practice the same best practices that you did in rapport building. You're listening, you're pausing, you're repeating back the last 3 things they said. You know, you're just having a very calming interview. Now you've already built rapport, which is helping them to trust you. So they're going to start telling you the story, and you're going to let them tell as much as they can. You will keep them in that story for as long as you can. The longer you can keep them in the story, the more that they will remember. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we go into the science of this. So we did that, and then we do our clarifying questions. Those are the questions that we ask after we get the story. Sometimes we call it getting the narrative from them. Sometimes I refer to that as getting the story from them. I use those terms interchangeably. So once we have gotten all of our information, we review the notes or our snap chart. And if you're like me, my handwriting is terrible. And if I want to be sure that I got everything right, and I'm reviewing it because I promised the witness we would review it together. This gives them an opportunity to clarify. It gives me an opportunity to think of more questions or things that I might have missed. And then, we let them know we may have to follow up because we don't want them to be worried or bothered if they get an email from us or a voicemail from us that we have a couple more questions. Just let them know in advance that we may be contacting you again with a couple more questions. Then thank them and ask them to call you. That's a good best practice. Ask them to call you if they think of anything else. But you know as well as I do that these people are not going to call you, right? They are not, if they didn't want to be in that interview in the first place. So they're not going to call back. So the best practice is after 24 hours, call them, because that's going to be your best opportunity to get more information. And I promise you, if you do this 12-step process this way and you do this cognitive portion, you are going to open the doors in their memory, and information about this event is going to be coming to their consciousness all day long. They're going to dream about the incident, because that's what happens when we take somebody back and do memory work with them and allow them to go back into their long-term memory and bring that out. It just doesn't stop the minute they walk out of your office, out of your interview. They're going to be thinking of things all day, and they'll think, well, maybe I should have said that, but I'm not going to open that can of worms again. So the best practice is call them after 24 hours. And then that's the end of the interview, thanking them, letting them go, and taking a look at our notes again, trying to decide, is there anybody else I need to interview? Is there more evidence that I need to collect? Maybe I need to go, maybe I found out about a policy I wasn't aware of, or I didn't even know there was a procedure to this job. I need to go get that. I need to not just get the checked off procedure. I need to get the one at the office, and I need to compare them and see if they're, if they're the same. Is there any other evidence that this witness may have told me that makes me know that I have to go collect some things? Or do I have security video to collect? Is there control room video? Video doesn't lie. It's my favorite piece of evidence, right? People will lie, but video doesn't lie. So if you can get a video, that's an awesome thing to have as part of your evidence collection. And then finally, I'm going to get with my team and tell them what I found out. We're going to update. We're going to put all of this information into the snap chart. So I hope you know that the snap chart is not just a timeline of events that led to an incident. The snap chart is a central repository for all of your evidence collection. And if you're using the software, we've done some incredible updates on that. You can attach pictures to your events now, put them in your attachment folder. We have an app that you can take pictures out in the field with, even if you don't have internet access, pictures and video and things like that, and it'll upload to your investigation when you get back. You can link things in the root cause tree now. You can actually choose the events and the conditions that are evidence as to why you answered a question, yes or no. So the software fully documents your investigation, and why not have it all in one place? You don't need a file over here with the interview. You don't need a file over here with, you don't need all this stuff or evidence all over the place. Take pictures of it, upload it to the snap chart, keep everything nice and tidy in one place, and you'll save yourself a lot of headache later. That's the 12-step process. Any questions about that? Questions or comments about the process? I'm going to deep dive just a little bit of the science. Okay. So here's where the psychology is built into the Taproot 12-step interview process. It's built into building rapport. Steps 3, 4, and 5 are dedicated to building rapport. Now, remember, I said steps 3 and 4 were completely different than step 5. Step 3 and 4 is the small talk part of the, introducing yourself and making them feel comfortable with you. And then step 5 is teaching them how the interview is going to go without telling them how the interview is going to go. So it's very different purposes, but that is some of the psychology there. And then the other part of the psychology to this process is in the questioning process. Steps 6 and 7, the cognitive interview. Cognitive is all about retrieving information, facilitating your investigative interview in such a way that they are able to retrieve important information from memory. So let's take a look about this. And I did dog slides because I love dogs, and it's Friday. And I thought, we need a little lightheartedness, right? We've had some heavy subjects this week and we've had a lot of hard learning. So this is my smart dog, my smart psychologist dog here. And he's telling me that I have 27 seconds to make a good impression. That's not very long, 27 seconds. So, you know, when my witness comes into the office, not only do I want to keep my body language in check and make sure that I am not throwing off some uncomfortable nonverbal behaviors that they will subconsciously or consciously recognize in me and then become very agitated too. So I want to be sure that I introduce myself and that I know their name, right? That I know their name. Not only do I know their name, but I know how to pronounce their name, right? Because there's no sweeter sound than your own name. Everybody likes to hear their own name. So I was thinking about this morning and building rapport. And I was thinking about a book I mentioned at my class on Monday and Tuesday. And that was about Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that was written in 1930, still relevant. Okay, he didn't call it the psychology of making friends or influencing people, but that's what it is. And because look at some of these things, this little outline of what Dale Carnegie says. He says, you know, there's really 6 things to building rapport. One is having a genuine interest in others, being genuinely interested in others. Number 2 is smile. We forget to do that sometimes, but how much more approachable is someone if you see someone here at the conference, if they're smiling, if somebody's smiling at a table, breakfast table, and somebody over here is not smiling at a breakfast table, which table are you going to sit at? You're going to sit at the one that's welcoming, the person that's giving you a smile. Dale Carnegie says, remember their name. He's the one that says there's no sweeter sound than the sound of your own name. Very important to building rapport. Listen. Everybody thinks that an investigative interview is about asking the questions. Not about that at all. It's about how good of a listener are you. Did anybody get to see Vincent Phipps, his talks? He talked a lot about listening. So important. That's the best building rapport skill that you can have, is to really plug in and listen to someone. We want to talk about them. Let's not make it about us. You know, good rapport building is making it about them, is being curious about someone else. And we want to sincerely make them feel important. You know, we don't want to go overboard and make them feel like we're just trying to win their attention. But if you could think of a way to sincerely make them feel important, point out some character strength in them. I don't know how many years you've been coming to the summit, but we used to have Dr. Scioto here, and she talked about building character and character traits and really pointing out to people specific character traits like, wow, you're really creative. You know, just words like that. Wow, you're a good problem solver. You know, you have a lot of integrity. You know, make people feel important. Point out those things about them. And that's a very good rapport building skill. So building rapport, the psychology about that, we only have 27 seconds to make a good impression. So be sure that you introduce yourself and you say their name, you know, say their name, know how to pronounce their name. It helps them to feel calm and it builds trust. Those are the 2 keystone things that you really want to happen to make this interview successful. They need to calm down and they need to trust you, right? They need to calm down and they need to trust you. And you want to show, you know, don't tell. It gives the witness confidence in you. Like I said, people do not have confidence. We could tell I could walk up to anyone and tell them how great I am at this or at that, but until they see that I'm actually able to do what I'm back up my words, they're not going to believe it. So it's really important that you find ways to show and don't tell with words. It will just give the witness confidence in you. So, and this is how it's done. And we've discussed this. This is steps 3, 4, and 5 of the Taproot 12-step process. We're putting thought into the interview intro. We're getting our thoughts together a few minutes before that witness comes in. We're making sure our appearance is good. We're making sure our cell phone, science tells us that if we have our cell phone even face down on the desk, it's still a distraction. Turn it off, put it in the drawer. Call them by name, introduce yourself. Tell them how you're going, tell them that thank them for coming because they're going to help you find out what the problems are. So they there's no more fatalities, there's no more injuries. They are going to be part of the team and helping us fix this problem. And breaking the ice, which is asking the very first question you ask them is an open-ended question that is not related to the incident. And that is where you will teach them how the interview is going to go without telling them how the interview is going to go. And, we have this questioning, and then I know how it feels, but like this little dog here, but I have questions. When do I get to ask my questions? Okay, well, you're going to get to ask your questions after the cognitive portion of the interview. You don't want to ask questions initially, as we have already discussed. Remember, if you can't remember anything about my presentation today, please remember to allow for silence. Please remember to allow for silence during an interview. It's uncomfortable, but with practice, it becomes easier because people will fill in the silence with more information. And don't ask a witness why. Why did you turn the valve to the left? Why? Well, and why do I ask? Why do I say that? What? It could be. It could seem punitive. Yeah. It could seem like we're like judging them, or 5 how process. Yeah, why is never a good question for an investigative interview, for sure. So how do we do this? How do we do this questioning process effectively? I've talked a little bit about it already. I've talked about the cognitive interview process, and that is when after you've done building your rapport, and you can say, okay, let's talk about this incident. I wasn't there, saying I wasn't there. That's why I'm relying on you for information. That can really help and witness feel like they are actually in the principal role. I'm like, oh, okay. And then ask them to tell you from start to finish, what happened that day. No detail is too small. Take your time. And so then as we sit and we're doing these pauses and we're letting our witnesses kind of relax into that, the doors to their long-term memory open. So this reminds me of some of the comments we had at the beginning of the session. So information not always accurate. This has a lot to do with memory and how memory works. So we have our short-term memory. When we put something in short-term memory, it stays there for about 15 seconds. And if we don't rehearse it or do something to commit it to our long-term memory, it just doesn't get there. So when you're seeing that information is not always accurate, it's not always because somebody is straight up lying to you. Sometimes they didn't get it committed to their long-term memory. And, they'll give you some information that's not accurate, but it's how they stored it in their memory or did not store it in their memory. So when someone can't remember something, it's either it never got out of their short-term memory or it is in their long-term memory. Once you commit something to your long-term memory, it is there for a lifetime. That's why the cognitive process is so effective. If they put it in their long-term memory and you set up your interview the way that we've taught the 12-step process, and we've opened the doors to long-term memory, it's there. It's not that it's not there if they don't remember it and they have committed it to the long-term memory. It's that they are using ineffective retrieval methods to get that information out of their long-term memory. So effective retrieval methods is keeping them on topic, asking them open-ended questions, giving them time to open all those doors. And we sit with them and we do that and we just take our time and we're drinking water and we're repeating back and we're echo probing is taking the last 3 words and repeating it back as a question, or we're summarizing and we're staying right there in that story until we feel like 100% there's nothing else that this person is going to be able to tell me about this story. Never move on before you get to that point. And cognitive interviews are not something you can do in 5 minutes. They take time. They take time to set up and they take time. The process takes time. time that is very well spent and very much worth it. So the reason you don't want to start with a question is because the minute you get excited and you ask a question about that incident, the doors to the long-term memory slam shut, and good luck getting back there because you're not going to be able to. So once you ask a question, you're not going to get any more of that narrative. You're not going to get any more of that story. So make sure you got all that first. And then you can go and using the funnel technique to ask those clarifying questions. Remember I said the second step was to prepare for the interview. You can write your question list, but by now that you've gotten the story, you're probably going to be marking some of those questions off because you weren't there. So you were only writing questions based on your own biases, and we all have them. We can't get rid of biases. That's how we're created. So you're probably going to be marking some of those questions off because you know now that they're not even relevant because you've gotten the narrative from this witness. So we've done this cognitive interview, and now it is time. The cognitive interview, like think of it as a funnel. Like a funnel is really big at the top, and that's where the cognitive part is. And you're getting all this information coming in the top of the interview. Now you want to bring it in a little bit more. And that's when you're going to ask those clarifying questions, but still stick with tell, explain, describe. Don't ask the yes or no questions yet. Keep them talking, okay, you mentioned this. Can you tell me about this? Can you explain to me about this? If they're having a hard time remembering something, get a plant map and put it on the table and say, okay, can you show me what happened? Show me on this map what happened. Like, where were you standing? Where did this issue arise? Show me that. Or if it's a sensitive subject, like if there was a fatality or a serious injury, we want to be ethical. And so we can use a sketch of the facility. We wouldn't want to show a picture and cause a lot of reopen that trauma that person went through when they saw that. So a sketch is very effective for a witness who has experienced a lot of trauma. But if there's not a lot of trauma involved, you can also use the photographs. You can let them look at video. You can even go out and do a reenactment. If you feel like you could get more information from a reenactment, but you got to be careful that you don't reenact the incident, right? Because we've actually heard of that actually happen, haven't we, Linda? People go do reenactments and all of a sudden there's a new incident. So be careful about that. So we're using the funnel technique. We've got the cognitive interview. We're bringing it in. We're doing more open-ended questions. Now we're asking them things that we want to know, keeping them talking. And then when we're satisfied that they've told us all the stories that we could get them to tell us, now we're down at the bottom of the funnel. Now you can ask those rapid fire yes, no questions. Was Tim Jones at the toolbox talk? Was the forklift yellow or green? Questions that of that nature. Any questions about that? Any questions about that? So I have a question for you. How will the psychology behind root cause analysis interviewing change the way that you do interviews? And also, if you want to know more about this, our whole process is built on the work that these two researchers did, Rebecca Milne and Ray Bull. I've read this book about 10 times. It's a great book. It's called Investigative Interviewing, Psychology and Practice. And everything that we've talked about today, you can find a lot more information. You can even find research on studies that they did of police interviewers, and how police interviewers who were professionals in their field for 10 years would give their witness about 7 seconds, and then they would start pounding them with questions. And it's just really interesting research. But how would this change for you? Anybody have any comments? Hopefully, what's the best piece of information that that are taken away from this presentation?
I like the using the template tree. I like that question.
Yeah.
That was very useful.
Yeah, great, awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Anybody else?
We've not allowed them to review your notes. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, reviewing the notes. Thing to be careful for is not putting judgment in the notes if they're going to be reviewing them. Yeah. What else? Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot. You shared, I guess the part that I'm struggling with, and I do I focus on a lot of audit interviews. So like
Yeah.
we've done, individual interviews. We do some group interviews. So I'm kind of hung up on the, when do you, because the goal of the investigation is to really learn, right? So
Right.
in kind of a no blame culture or environment where we want to learn and we want to build that rapport and trust, our organization does do some kind of group learning from incidents activities, and where it's not. So I'm trying to kind of wrestle with when would you, because there are certain incidents where you do want to have this, one-on-one interviews, a more structured investigation process, but there are other situations where bringing the group of people that do the work into the room and having just a candid conversation around how does the work normally get done? What are the different variables that you see? What do you see? So I don't know. So I'm wrestling with kind of the group learning aspect versus kind of the one-on-one interview aspect. I don't know if you have any guidance on when to do which and which different types of incidents, but that's kind of where my brain is going with all this.
Yeah, well, in evidence collection, we have to keep in mind that certain types of evidence are fragile. And those are the types of evidence, transitory or fragile evidence, we want to collect that first. And some things are like weather conditions, and those are things that you can get from an investigative interview. And sometimes we forget to ask about that. But sometimes incidents happen because there's high winds and rain. But then when we get there, it's a nice sunny day and we're trying to investigate this and we're thinking, I don't get how this happened. If we didn't ask the witness or have that on the witness board, that's fragile evidence. And the witness's memory is fragile as well. Other types of fragile evidence, that you want to collect first are things like, well, just not environmental conditions outside, but inside too. Take a look at the back of the root cause tree under human engineering, under work environment, and there's a whole lot of things to think about. What was housekeeping like? Was it too hot? Was it too cold? There's a lot of things that will jog your memory to ask these witnesses about it. But back to your question, if you've got a witness, the longer you let them go without interviewing them, the more, they're going to lose some of that from their memory, and the more they're going to talk to other people. And they may or may not intentionally change their story. But as human beings, that's how we are. Someone will tell us something that happened and we saw it a different way, but we'll doubt ourselves and say, well, I don't know, maybe it didn't happen that way. So get those witnesses in first. The experts, the people who didn't witness it, you can have them come in anytime. That's not urgent. You can schedule them later for sure. I want to make sure I got all these. Defensiveness and people protecting the peers. So let's take defensiveness first. The rapport building helps some with defensiveness. So when you are doing an investigative interview, you really have three types of witnesses, right? You have the first witness is the one who's going to come in and be very cooperative and tell you everything. That hardly ever happens. The second type of witness is a reluctant witness, and that is a witness who's going to come in and be a little bit nervous and maybe not really sure what they're going to tell you. But when you use a Taproot 12-step process and build that rapport, you're going to change them from reluctant to cooperative. Most people fall into that category. And then you have this third category of witness, and that's the person who's not going to give you anything. It doesn't really matter what you do. You're going to work on this interview process all day, but they're not going to give you any information at all. And so everybody asks me this, like, what do I do? They come in, they just sit down, and they're like, yes, no, yes, no. They won't say anything. And I say, well, you've got to get another witness, or you've got to collect different types of information, a video, or go out to the field or take some pictures. You're going to have to get information in another way. We are not in the business of police officers, right? We're workplace investigators. So we're not going to intimidate people to get them to tell us what we need to know. So sometimes that happens. And so rapport building will help a lot with defensiveness, and people protecting their peers. Yeah, that is going to happen. That is why building trust in an interview is so important. And so we can only take that so far, and they're probably still going to try to protect their peers. But you set your interview up with that rapport building and make them feel calm that they can trust you, you may get more information than you would have otherwise. Any other questions? Yes.
Question on that.
Sure.
So if we encounter this, I wouldn't say frequently, but
Mhm.
it's not uncommon. So you interview two people that were involved in the incident, no matter how,
Mhm.
and they give you distinctly different stories of what happened.
Yeah.
And you know it's not them one seeing it one way,
Mhm.
it's flat out, they're giving you contradictory stories, trying to protect the supervisor, so to speak, or something like that. How do you address that with both of those employees? Because
Yeah.
we went all the way, I mean, can't go any further in the snap chart because we
Mhm.
cannot figure out which one's telling us the truth.
There's a little trick you can do, and that is tell the story from end to beginning. Usually people tell the story from start to finish, but this is psychology too. And you can set it up like, okay, you gave me this great information, but I just want to know if you can remember any more. And sometimes it's helpful to remember information if it's instead of telling the story from start to finish, you're telling it from finish to start. And what happens there is the brain cannot handle the cognitive load of lying too much. So the lies will change or they'll be omitted or new lies will be put in that timeline. So that can inform you a little bit. If you have them tell you the story, which one's telling the truth? The one that stays more consistent when they're telling it the story from the incident to the beginning, if it's consistent with what they said from the beginning to the end, I would find that to be more reliable testimony than the one who is having all kinds of little weird things in there.
So
Yeah.
what we do is we go from start to finish.
Mhm.
And then when we review the notes, we ask them to go from finish to start.
Yes,
And then we go through it and we talk with them.
yes.
But what we'll find is something very, very, it did, you know, they'll say, well, the supervisor conducted a JSA meeting and we
Mhm.
discussed this. And then we'll get the next person, they'll say, no, supervisor never had a meeting. And, yeah, my
Mhm.
signature may be on there, but he signed it on there after.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, you can't really challenge the first person.
Mhm.
And we ran into situations where they may be, whatever reason, the second person is mad at the supervisor. We find this out I mean, we're in corrective actions and, oh, by the way, he was mad at the supervisor because he got his promotion or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to throw him on the bus.
So-
And so we've done
yeah.
it both ways. And so I don't know if it's, and I know you probably can't give me an answer to that, but is it okay at any point to pull both of them in there and say, hey, look, your stories are conflicting.
Mhm.
We're not calling anybody a liar, but we can't go any further with this. So you give me your version, you give me your version, and we're gonna figure out which one's right. Is it okay to do that?
I have clients who have done that with success. It's a little tricky, but if that's the last straw that you have, you can try it. I mean,
We've been reluctant to do it because we don't want to go into that police mode, but
right.
you know, I've talked to our investigators, you know, I don't know how
Mhm.
else to address this because we can't get to root causes. We can't figure this piece of it out. because
Right. You're already doing the beginning to end to beginning. So that's a great best practice. If you're still not getting it, then, you know, I don't see that you'd have anything to lose in the end if there's just nothing else you can learn. But one thing interesting that you said was somebody said that they had some kind of emotion about something and you found out about that later. So that's also memory is tied to our emotions. So if we go to work one day and maybe we're upset, we've had an argument with our significant other and we feel upset when we get to the plant, that emotion is stored in our memory with any events that we see. So sometimes during an investigative interview, like you can ask questions about emotion, like how are you feeling that day? Was that a good day for you? Did you have any moods or emotions going on? Because then when they remember something like, oh, I had that big fight with my significant other that day, then the memory opens and they actually come up with more things. So the events will be tied with that person's emotions if you can remember to ask them about their emotions that day. I was thinking something else as I was talking and it's left my brain. But yeah, that's a good best. Sounds like you have a good best practice for interviewing those suggestions, maybe asking about the emotion and then trying it. And if you do try it, let me know. Because I like hearing feedback. I'm curious. Okay.
It happens,
Okay.
you know, it's weird.
Yeah.
With our company, I don't want to monopolize time or anything, but it's basically 5 different companies that came together under one umbrella.
Yeah.
They have distinctive business lines, and some of them, the culture is advanced.
Yeah.
And others are still in the mode of, I'm gonna protect my supervisor because that's my high school friend or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's like, but we've had them just say, I'm not telling you anything.
Oh, yeah. That's the witness that you're not getting anything from. You're not. Don't waste your time.
Yeah.
You got to get it someplace else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's what we deal with. And like I said, in several business lines, it's never an issue. They don't really have conflicting stories other than just what they've seen.
Yeah.
But 2 business lines, it's like, might as well get ready for a fight because you're
Yeah.
not gonna get a straight story.
Right. It's a tough job. It is a very tough job. And I admire and respect all of you for your hard work on it. And there's me and my dog. If you want to contact me, Cara@taproot.com. She's 13 years old. She's a rescue pup. Having a hard time getting around these days. She's in her retirement years. So she's the diva of the house. That her name is a Lucy, or we call her Udi because she's more of a Udi than a Lucy, right? So cute. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to continue this conversation with you. And I think it's a good time to take, did you have?
I just have one
Yeah.
comment. I know we need to move on.
Yeah.
But I think an underlying thing to all of this is that it's a really the cultural and the people aspect is huge because with all of these, there's a fear of an undesired outcome. Like I'm not going to share information because it might incriminate or whatever. I'm gonna be defensive because I don't know what's gonna happen. So
Yes.
there's not a full trust of the process or the investigator or whatever. So building that rapport and trust is huge. And just, that whole no blame culture, there's people that are gross negligence or sabotage, there's things culturally that, if you don't have a culture of learning where people want to be a part of helping to improve the system, which what we're trying to do, then you're going to have lots of issues. So just looking at the cultural aspect on this, I think is a huge part of it.
Absolutely. Good comment. Thank you. Thank you for your participation, your time and attention. Let's take a 5-minute break. So 5 or 10, what do you want, Ann? Do you want? Fine's fine. Let's take a 5-minute break. We don't have a clock up, so please be timely and come back at 10:05. And Ann's going to set up for her presentation.
Hey, Barlow, it's
Yeah.
a little bit difficult with puppies.
Oh,
I have a 1.5-year-old Yorkie. I'm 50
oh,
years old this year. It's the first dog I've ever owned. And my wife and I are like, do we really want to go down that route?
right.
We got her when she was 6 weeks old.
Uh-huh.
This is the first
There you go. Okay, cool. And I'm going to be talking to you about burnout today. I know it's Friday. I know we're all kind of burnt out on the summit, so I realize the irony of this subject. But I have kind of experience with extreme burnout. My husband also runs a woodworking business that I help him with, and especially during the pandemic, it exploded and went crazy. So I learned a lot from that and how to step back and prevent it and recover from it. So what we're going to cover is I'm going to talk to you about what burnout really is, stress versus burnout, how to recognize burnout and the environments that cause it. And I'm also going to talk to you about how to recover and prevent burnout. So what really is burnout? It is it's a psychological definition that makes you feel swamped, overworked, underappreciated. You may also feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, unable to keep up with your life's demands. So a lot of people just think, oh, it's just stress. But no, I mean, stress is a main cause of burnout, but it is really a prolonged period of stress. So when you're thinking of stress, there we go. Here we go. Here we go. Your emotions are overreactive. You have that hyper state that, oh, I gotta go, I gotta get this done. If I get this done now, we're good to go. That's kind of what stress is. It has the main anxiety. It can cause you physical damage because you're rushing around, you might be bumping into things, doing things. But burnout is going to be, okay, where's this clicker sensor thing? Okay, your emotions are blunt. You feel empty inside, you're just tired all the time. Your daily life is just, you have no motivation for it. You have a sense of detachment and loss. And it's almost like a form of depression. So when you're thinking, the best way to distinct them is when you're stressed, it's too much. Everything, you have too much going on. You have too many responsibilities. You have too many people coming at you. But with burnout, you have not enough. You're devoid of emotion. You don't have enough energy to even care about what's going on. You have an important project coming up, but you don't care anymore. It's just, there's not enough in me to give. So when you have this thinking in mind of stress versus burnout, I wanted to play a little game to get you guys up and interacting, especially since it's kind of Friday and everybody's really tired and you've been sitting around all week. So looks like we're just gonna have one big group. And so what we're going to do is you're gonna get in this one big group. I'm gonna hand you a ball and you're gonna establish a throwing pattern. And they're nice little soft, smushy stress balls. And you're gonna establish a throwing pattern. Now you cannot throw back to the same person, and each person needs to touch the ball at least once. So I'll give you guys, let's get up, stand up. Let's get in this group. Wait, well, who wants to play actually? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, great. So
in the very back, or?
yeah, let's go in the very back. Let me grab this container. And this, I guess, assignment or game is supposed to simulate stress. So that's fun, right? On your Friday, you want a stress simulator. Yeah. All right, who wants the ball first? Okay, so you just throw it to one person and establish a pattern. Everybody has to touch it or catch it, and you cannot throw back to the same person. It needs to come back to Barb. So I'll give you guys a minute to establish that throwing pattern. No, she's gotta go here, you gotta go there. It's gotta go to Danielle and then Barb. Now, so it's the same one again. Same pattern again. Uh-huh. And then again, but faster. Faster, keep going. There you go. Now go, keep going, throw that ball. Here we go. We gotta keep going. You can't stop. You gotta keep going. There's another one.
I feel like that. You're gonna burden Mrs.
You gotta keep
Shirley.
going. We gotta keep it up. We gotta keep up production. We gotta keep going. Can't drop the ball now, you guys. Keep on throwing. Right. We're getting there. We're almost okay. We're working out the issues here. All right, here we go. We gotta stay within our same throwing patterns.
Oh, you're nice.
All right, we got one more to throw in. One more. Here we go. Oh, come on, join the game. You gotta join the game. Uh-oh, we dropped one. Wait, one more ball and we're good to go. Let's get this pattern one more time. All right. Do we want to do a no throwing pattern, or are you guys getting the feel of stress here? Do we need to add more balls or go faster? Need to go faster? All right. Well, that's a game of simulating stress. Y'all can have a free stress ball now to squeeze out for the rest of the meeting. So if y'all want to take one, give yourself some good stress relief in here. You're welcome.
You've seen the Laverne and Shirley episode. You probably have never even heard of Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, what's
But,
the
we're at the-
da-da?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the-
the intro.
Well, actually, I think it was also Carol Burnett did a skit like that.
Uh-huh.
Monica Vanderbilt.
Yeah. I think it's like the I Love Lucy when she's trying to think and she's stuffing chocolates in her mouth and trying to eat them. Yeah. So that's a game of like stress. So could you imagine if your job just kept piling on responsibilities, telling you to do your work faster, get it done now, keep going. Oh, you're doing a good job, but here's more responsibilities for you. Here's, another team member to train, something like that. And how that stress, that prolonged period of stress can lead into burnout. You don't feel like there's a way out. You feel like there's no end in sight. You're not being appreciated for all this hard work that you're doing. Where's my clicker? Here we go. So this we're going to recognize. Recognizing stress is just like a part of it. That's just one key to burnout. So some of our burnout symptoms are going to be physical. We're going to have mental symptoms and emotional and mental. So physical, you're getting more seated in yourself. You're going to see your sleep schedule change. You're going to see your appetite change. You're going to, maybe if you do your blood pressure test, it's going to go up. Emotional, we'll see that ourselves and other people. Someone who's easygoing might be anxious all the time. They might have some outbursts. They will lash out at you. Someone who's happy-go-lucky might be coming into work just down on themselves. And then mental. People who's really sharp and on the ball, they're going to have forgetfulness. Someone who's optimistic might now become a pessimist. Those are the kind of symptoms you're going to recognize in yourself and other individuals that they might be on the road to burnout. Behavioral signs that you will have is withdrawing from your responsibilities. It may not be that they're lazy at their job. They may just feel like there's no way out. They may be feeling like they're trapped. So they're withdrawing with the responsibilities, trying to protect themselves. They might be skipping work, coming in late, giving you those excuses why they can't be here all the time. Another thing is they're taking a really long time to get things done. Someone you hired in the beginning might be, I can get this to you in a day. But they're taking on the stress that you may not even be knowing about. And now they're turning around and things are taking weeks, months to get done. So this is when you're going to look at this burnout curve here. And what I'm going to show you is the more emptiness and unimportant you feel, your output and your satisfaction in life kind of goes down. I have a lot of clicks here. All right, so At the beginning, we're going to have that stress. We're going to have those high expectations at work, high expectations at your life. You know, you're scheduling a lot of kids' appointments, extracurricular activities after your job. That's going to be the start. And then you're going to start feeling like this is never going to end. I've been doing this loop, this stress loop over and over and over every week. And then it's just going to keep going down. You're going to start lashing out at others. Your mental exhaustion is going to come in. You're going to start feeling pessimistic because your view on life is changing. And at the very end, it's collapse. And I was joking with Barb today that if I pass out here in the front, that she could just continue on and be like, that's a sign of burnout there, because it's been a long, long week. But this is like the curve here. So as you start to go down, you can recognize in yourself and in your workers that, oh, they're starting to go down this downward spiral. And how can we help? How can we change this? And we're going to learn that here at the very end, some prevention tips. So some sources of burnout, these might seem kind of obvious to people, but of course, your job, your organization, that's going to be most people's main source of burnout. They think their company, there's no way for you to advance. So you're doing all this hard work, you're doing having all these responsibilities, but where are you going? What's your future? Am I going to advance in my career? Am I going to get a pay raise? Am I getting that recognition that I deserve? If you're a leader, are you doing this for your employees? Are you giving them that pay raise? Are you giving them that recognition that they deserve? Some people, that's all they need. They just need to know that they're doing a good job. Your environment. So on the job, is it cold? Is it hot? Is it really loud? Are there a lot of noises, flashing lights? Is there something having information overload? Is there a lot going on at once that can kind of correlate with overcrowding? There might just be so much going on that people just get overwhelmed and can't focus, can't think straight. And lastly, of course, is our personal lives, our family lives. Are we having a feud with our family? Do we have a toxic relationship? Are our health issues? Are we having serious health issues that are bringing us down and just makes us feel like we're not going to ever recover and be back to our physical standards that we want? And then also our values and our attitude. You know, some people are more pessimistic than others. Some people have really high standards and values. Some people, the job they may be working at may not align with their values and their beliefs, and that can cause internal conflict and bring down your mental well-being. So this is what I was talking about just a second ago about pessimistics and your personality traits. These people are more susceptible to burnout. So if you know someone like this, you know they're probably going to be more susceptible to burnout. As a person who's a control freak, no one likes micromanagement. No one likes it. No one likes to be doing their job for years and have someone come stand over their shoulder and tell them what to do. It's not fun, and those people who are like that are more susceptible to burnout because they're going to be trying to control every single little aspect, when in reality, you really can't do that. You have to let your employees do their job and expect them to do what they want, or expect them to perform at the high standard. High achieving personalities, type A personalities, people who are always wanting to do the best, be number one. I have to excel in everything I do. They're more susceptible to burnout. People who are pessimistic. Not only are they more susceptible to burnout, but they can bring people who are positive down too. You know, if you work with someone who's a pessimistic and they're always saying negative things, or always thinking the worst is going to happen, that can bring you down and also bring themselves down or bring the team down. So that'd be something you would want to address and look out for, is people who are like that. And, you know, maybe talk to them and help them realize that the worst is not always going to happen. Sometimes good things happen too. And lastly is the perfectionist. I know I'm this way. I like things to be perfect. I will nitpick. And you know what? I always have to remember myself, it's never going to be perfect. I'm always going to find something and I have to let it go. I can't continue to just stay on this one subject or this one slide or this one blog post that I write all the time. Also, that comes back to my husband's woodworking job. He does furniture and all this stuff, but he started a company doing dogs because we love dogs. I have 4. And so we started working dog bowl stands. And you can sit there and paint and stay in the same dog bowl stand for like days. I kid you not. I'll find a flaw in it and I have to go and sand it off and paint it again. But what the problem is that our orders are backing up and I can't spend 5 days painting the top for a silly dog bowl stand when most people then put the bowl in, ship it to them, and then they're going to be like, oh, this is perfect. They would never know all the stress that I've used. And if I were to just let it go 4 days ago, I could have moved on to other orders. So this is when you need to think about, are you on the road to burnout? Do you know somebody who's on the road to burnout? Do you recognize this in your employees or in yourself or in your family members? This doesn't have to be job related. So these are some questions you can ask yourself. Is every day you get up a bad day? Are you just having a bad day every day? Then you might want to step back and be like, oh, I might be getting burnt out here. Whatever I'm doing is not working. Are you exhausted all the time? Is your work at home seem pointless? Does your work at your job seem pointless? That pile of laundry that's piling up, who cares about that? It's pointless. I don't need that. Maybe you feel like you're not making a difference in life. So I know here at Taproot, we make a big difference. People, y'all are in here saving people's lives, changing your company's culture, doing all these great things. But sometimes we lose perspective of that and we feel like we're not making a difference. So we have to step back and think about that. So this is when, whoa, hey. Okay, this is when I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on coping and recovering from burnout. So some coping with burnout, the main thing is the best way is to identify and eliminate whatever stress, whatever that factor is that is causing you stress. If it is too much work, delegate. If it is a family member, maybe talk to them to tell them the issues that you have going on. But if you want to look at it as like, can I change what is happening? If you can change it, then you need to work on it. If you can't, then maybe you need to communicate what is going on in your surroundings. Also set goals that reflect your values and beliefs. That's really important. You don't want to set a goal that you don't believe in. And you're never going to do it and you're never going to achieve it. Also learn to say no. That was my biggest one, is learning to say no. I had to learn to say, hey, I can't take on that assignment right now. I'm way too busy. I want to do it because I want to make that person happy and I want to help them. But if I can't do it, it's not going to help them either. If I can't get it done in a timely manner, that's going to cause them stress. It's going to cause them to come at me, which then causes me stress. It's just a vicious cycle. Also, like what I was saying with the woodworking, my husband, he had to learn to say no to jobs when he was piled on with all these jobs, especially when he first started out. He wanted to take any job he got because he wanted to improve his reputation. He wanted to make that money. So he took on all these jobs. And then eventually it was too much. He couldn't do it anymore. And it causes a lot of problems. It causes stress. It causes backup. It causes delays. And your customers aren't happy. So you have to learn to say no, not only for your sake, but for them. And if you tell them, if you would have told them to start with, hey, I'm really busy, but in like a month I can get to it. And if they're still happy with that, then, he could have taken that job on a little later and caused a little stress to a little further down the road. Not major stress, but you could have, normal job stress a little further down the road. And that was something we really, really learned, is to say no. And that slide is gone again. I kind of work on not clicking. And then the biggest one too is another big one is seeking support, especially if you're moving to a new city, don't have that family support behind you. It can be really hard for people that experience a lot of burnout. People quit and move back home because they don't have that emotional support that they came from. So the way to do that is find a group of people who share a similar hobby or interest, whether that's hiking. There's lots of groups now you can go out and join hiking. I am a part of Knox Makers. They do DIY creative stuff. And that's how I get out there, and I've joined a group and they've given you support. But I'm also lucky enough to have all my family here. So I have a great support system here. But for people who have moved or even going to college and they move to different colleges, it's really important for them to find that support group. Do you have any questions so far or comments on anybody who burnout? Oh, that was not Eric Reason's here. Good? Go ahead. Yeah, and it's a lot of like, oh, I've heard this before, I might have heard this before, or I've thought of it before, but I think it's always a good refresher, especially last year at our summit, we had a lot of comments about burnout at a job, burnout at their passions. And so that's why we thought, we'll bring this into this summit this year and just give people a little refresher on how to prevent this, how to recognize it and stuff. So good.
It's okay to be where I'm at. I'm doing the best that I can and just try to breathe and relax. And the best that I can do is good enough. So
Yeah.
people can deal with it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like as I was saying earlier, you're good where you're at, but you do what you can. And that's why you set those boundaries, you set those limits. And, it's just it's a learning process as you grow. And especially people who start off in new jobs and things like that, you want to take on all those responsibilities to say, hey, I can do this job. Look at me, I'm doing great. But if you take on too much, you might then end up being burnt out. And then the worst case scenario, you feel like there's no end. And then you leave when it could have been something you were great at and you could have done great changes.
I think we all have that drive. We want to do better for ourselves. It's whatever great looks like for us. We want to be good at this or that, and then we beat ourselves up if you don't achieve whatever level you want to achieve by a certain time.
That's okay. Then that's when you go back, you reevaluate, and you continue on. I have that in a slide here in just a minute. I think it's in my next slide, actually. No, okay. More prevention tips. This is a great one. One of the ones that I really enjoy is starting with a relaxing day. My relaxing day is starting off with a cup of coffee that I just sit on my couch in front of my little fireplace and have like a nice little aesthetic setup. And I like to sit there and drink my coffee. And during the winter, I like to have my fireplace on, and it just relaxes me. It's how I like to start my day, and I like it to be quiet. I don't want people talking at me in the morning. Like I just want some 10 minutes of silence, and then I get ready for the day. That's like my ritual. So some people I know that they might do, it's just some self-care. Some people I know like to do skincare at night. They'll never skip it. That's how they just mentally reset for the day. At night, I also like to reset my house at night. Like I like to get my drinks in the fridge, my lunch packed. That way I know when I go to sleep, I'm not going to have a chaotic morning trying to run around and get everything done before work. Nourish your creative side. When I joined Knox Makers, that really helped with the woodworking side that I'm involved with sometimes. When I go there and I talk to those individuals and bounce ideas off of them and they give me good ideas, I always feel rejuvenated and ready to get back at it. I'm like, oh, I got some great ideas. I can't wait to get back and use those. I was talking earlier, set those boundaries, say no, or say not right now, but I can do it next week. Take another big one, I say that a lot this time, is turn your phone off, turn your TV off. The news can be stressful. TV can be stressful. Social media definitely can be stressful. People think, oh, well, I'll just go on there and mind-numbingly scroll through. But you don't know if you're going to see a post that's going to trigger you, set you off. People have other thoughts, ideas, and opinions, and you don't need that. It's okay to go on social media, but if you're having a hard time and you're feeling stressed, maybe that's just not the outlet you need to relieve that stress. And also help exercise. It sounds crazy, but it's so good for you, whether it's just like a 15-minute walk. It creates these endorphins that release in your brain that make you happy. That's a good way. It's just also a good way to work through some stuff. Some people like to lift heavy weights and just get their swole on, and that's how they work through things. Tacos, yeah, tacos and margaritas could be a great way. And so I mentioned the burnout curve here. Here we are again, stress at the top. That's how you start, and you collapse at the very bottom. That's the extreme. But we're gonna look at the reverse. So this is what happens when you reverse that curve. You're gonna, you start by taking a simple step, taking time out for yourself, and then reconnecting with family. You become disillusioned, you stop blaming others, you get a better future, you keep going up. So the more you do those things for yourself and for others, the more work and output, better work output you're gonna have, and the more satisfaction you're gonna have in your own life. So just some skills you can just look at and just try to incorporate into your own life. What skills does anybody ever had burnout that they used to overcome? Like anybody experienced burnout and they took their PTO, went on a Fiji vacation? That'd be nice. Anybody have ever experienced it? No? Okay. Yeah, it's like, yeah, and then anybody who's been Taproot trained knows the smarter steps, be specific, be measurable, be appropriate. You've seen this before. I'm sure we all have seen this smarter, set your goals smarter. Well, for burnout, just take it a little step further as a prevention tip and do the BA smarter. So set those barriers and make sure you find someone who can keep you accountable, or find a way to keep yourself accountable. Smarter is a great goal setting system, especially because you have the evaluate and reevaluate at the end. You may think you've done something that's going to change it, and you try it, and then you go back and look at it, you go, oh, that didn't work. So let me go back again and try it again. And this is why I really wanted to put this in as a management tool for stress, is because not only are you going to set these goals for your life, but we have to set those barriers. We have to figure out where I can say no, or where I can put my foot down, or where I can say, oh, well, I'll get it to you in a certain time frame, instead of going, oh, I'll get it to you right now. That we like to do when someone hands us off a project, be like, oh, I'll give it to you tomorrow. We maybe really can't give it to them tomorrow. Maybe it really is. I need 5 days to work on this because I have a whole other stuff to do. And the accountability part. A lot of people, well, I know for me, if I don't have someone accountable to keep me on track, I'm going to fall off track. It's just who I am as a person. I get stuck in my old ways, and I need accountability. Does anybody use Smarter for any of their goals before? Smarter system? Yeah? It's
Smarter, first time I've heard of Smarter.
Really?
Smarter.
You've never heard of Smarter before?
Heard Smart, but not the ER.
Oh, yeah. The evaluate and reevaluate, I think, are just really important steps, because people think, I think I'm going to be like, oh, I solved my problem. This is going to solve everything and make my life so easy. It's what I think all the time. And then I'm like, oh, that's not what I thought it was. I have to go back and reevaluate and figure out what it is, what I'm really trying to solve here. And yeah, the BA is the extra little beginning. So yeah, so Smarter is be specific. You need to have a very specific goal in mind. What am I trying to solve, and what is it? Measurable, you have to be able to do it in a way, in a measurable amount. So find it, like, say, does this make me happy or sad? I'm sad right now. Am I happy? Like, it could be something as simple as that, being measurable. Make sure it's appropriate. Make sure it's aligning with your goal. Don't say I'm going to run 5 minutes a day if your goal is to reduce your TV time. I don't really know necessarily how running 5 minutes a day would reduce your TV time when you can just turn your TV off or pick up another activity to get you out of the house. I mean, I know running does, but are you really going to want to run or watch TV?
Well, one thing about that, though, Ann, is that people gravitate towards negative rewards.
Yes.
And so you can say, well, I want to just turn the TV off. people aren't gonna do that.
You gotta find something you're gonna be happy to do. That's what I'm saying. Don't
So,
tell yourself you're gonna run for 5 minutes. Like, you're not gonna do that.
well, but what you can do is say, okay, in order for me to watch 10 minutes of TV, I have to run 5 minutes first.
Yes,
And I'm gonna
Give
reward
you-
myself with the TV.
yes.
But I'm gonna do this first.
That's a great example of how to make sure that it's appropriate.
You're talking about setting boundaries. I time block 15-minute increments my entire day.
Mhm.
I don't allow myself so many hours to work in a week.
Mhm.
And I'm very strict with that. My boss knows that and people that report to me know that.
Yeah,
And if you're gonna take some of my time, understand that I'm gonna get it back on the backside.
yeah.
Because if I don't set those boundaries, I'm a very much type A personality,
Mhm.
and I don't really understand the burnout part of it because I've never experienced it, honestly. But I won't allow myself to work that much extra if I can't fit it into my day into a 50-hour work week, Monday through Friday.
Yeah. That's great that you've never experienced burnout because it is hard to recover from. It is very, because something you're passionate about, you lose this disinterest in. And it's just like, how do you recover? Because when you go and you try to do it again, you just have all these negative connotations with it now. All of a sudden, I was passionate about my DIY and creativeness, but because of all this build up in the stress and all this stuff that's going on, now when I try to just start back up, even though I took some time off, it was like, oh, am I going to go through this again? Like, I don't want to go through this again. So that's just really hard to recover. It takes time. You're not going to take a 2-day break and then all of a sudden come back and be like, whoo, I'm ready to do it again. You might feel a little bit of energized afterwards, but you're going to go back if you don't fix what is happening to you. If you don't fix that stressor, you don't fix that problem that's going on that's causing this issue. Oh yeah.
Along those same lines, I think it's kind of the American way to really put a timeline on the emotion, like a timeline on grief or a timeline like anger, especially in my generation, like, okay, I'm gonna grieve for 5 days and be done with it. Grief can take years to process. A lot of heavy emotions can take a very long time to process. And so when we put a timeline on it, like you said, a 2-day vacation, it's nice to disconnect for 2 days and get yourself together, but that doesn't mean that, you have to put the pressure on yourself to be actually over this by now. It's not a realistic expectation.
Yeah, and it's fine that it takes time. That's just how it is. And if you need to take that time, if you need to take a month, or if it takes, so I have to work these issues out and it takes a while to do, that's okay. There's no one's in here saying, oh, well, this is going to solve all your problems tomorrow. When you go back to work on Monday, you're going to be like, hey, I'm not burnt out anymore. Like, I don't expect that from anybody at all. That's the takeaway here.
And on the processing and taking time and getting help, but it's kind of ties into mental health, but some things you need more than just time to process through. You need to get help, like seeing a professional, someone who knows how to help to rewire the things about you or from your family origin, whatever, that have caused you to have maybe some unhealthy habits that are causing burnout, that you're not managing your time well.
Yeah, I think that as us as humans, it's really hard for us to admit and stop and ask for help, whether it's in our job or in our personal lives. We want to seem like we have it all together all the time, but we don't. Life happens to us. Things happen in your family, things happen in your job, and it's okay to stop and ask for help. And I don't know what that was. Oh, fire. Okay. I guess we're gonna walk out.
Attention.
Does everybody remember where the muster point is? Where Mark said at the beginning? Yep.
Do not use the elevator. Walk to the nearest stairway. Do not use the elevator.
We're supposed to not bring our stuff, but I grabbed mine. We're supposed to go to the right. I think this way.
No, it's this way.
It's this way left. Muster points this way.
Walk to the nearest stairway and walk down on the front. Do not use the elevator. Walk to the nearest. Do not use the elevator. Walk to the nearest stairway. Attention, attention, attention. An emergency has been reported. All occupants
Yes, right now, I was like, what's going on down here?
walk down or silently entering for. Do not use the elevator. Walk to the nearest stairway. Do not use the
More. Thank you. What kind of mask? White here? Oh, nice and flowy. I love it. That was the end anyway. It was at the end. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much a discussion point.
Need a snap chart. We evacuate properly.
Yeah.
Well, now we know for next time, muster not over there. It's got to be 2 points. People who are down there got to muster that way. Okay, that was the end anyway. So I guess enjoy that. The 10-minute break or 11-minute break. I know, you can't take it.
Shocked by how many, I guess maybe looking from the outside in your game, it was obvious what you were gonna do.
Yeah.
But how shocked everyone was.
Yeah, I was like, what? It's in the ball, go faster.
So you done?
Yeah, we're done. There's no coming back from that.
Okay, let me,